I wanna hear the one about the big old plum tree. I wanna hear the one about the giggly bumblebee. I wanna hear the one about the juggling jumping flea. That's the story that I wanna hear. That's the story, that's the story, that's the story that I wanna hear. That's the story, that's the story, that's the story that I wanna hear.
Hello again, I'm Ronnie. Welcome to another show. This week we have a story about shoelaces. Someone called Jimmy makes some noise. We have a story about a girl that just won't get out of bed. We've got a song about a big woolly jumper. But first of all, let's have a story.
Gary had a bit of a problem. It was a bit of a big problem. It wasn't a big problem in terms of seriousness. It wasn't a war, no one was sick or injured, and it didn't really affect anyone else. But it was a big problem. It was a big problem in terms of size, because Gary was quite big. Giant-sized, in fact. Any problem he had was a big problem. And Gary's problem was that he couldn't tie his shoelaces. Giants have big feet, which means they need big shoes, which means that their big shoes have big shoelaces. Apparently, shoemakers who make shoes for giants can't get Velcro or buckles in giant sizes, so the only way to do up giant-sized shoes is with giant-sized shoelaces. Which is fine if you're a giant who knows how to tie shoelaces, but not if you're a giant who doesn't. So you can understand why Gary was feeling a bit glum. Since he couldn't tie his shoelaces, his feet slipped up and down inside his shoes, and he got terrible blisters. Giant-sized blisters, which gave him giant-sized pain. Sometimes he would trip over his giant-sized undone shoelaces and fall flat on his face. A giant falling over is quite a big deal. There would be small earthquakes every time he stumbled, and big earthquakes if he fell flat on his face. He would squish buildings and people and forests as he landed. It made things all rather difficult with his neighbours, as you can imagine. So Gary was sitting on a hillside, feeling glum, and looking down at his shoelaces trailing across the countryside in a big, undone, tangly mess. Now, giant shoelaces are giant-sized, of course. To regular-sized folk, they look like great big ropes, the kind you use to tie ships to the wharf. Young Horace was wandering through the fields on his way to the creek for a swim when he stumbled over one of Gary's shoelaces and fell on his face in the grass. He looked up and saw Gary sitting there with a big gloomy look on his face. "Hi, Gary," said Horace. "You look rather glum. What's up?"
Hello there, Horace.
Boomed Gary.
Sorry about tripping you up. You see, I don't know how to tie my shoelaces, and it's a bit of a nuisance, to be honest. I keep getting blisters and I keep tripping over, and it's all rather inconvenient, actually.
"Oh, Gary, you big silly Billy. It's really easy to tie your laces. Hasn't anyone ever showed you how?" asked Horace. He was feeling pretty smart, actually, because he just learnt how to tie his laces last week, and frankly it has changed his life and made him feel rather grown-up and special for a 6-year-old. "Would you like me to teach you?" Gary's face lit up and he nodded his head vigorously. So Horace sat next to him on the hillside and showed him how to twist one of the laces over and under the other one. And then he showed him how to make a loop with one of the laces. And then he showed him how to wrap the other lace around the loop and push the middle of it through. And then he showed him how to grip that push-through bit and pull it at the same time as he pulled the other loop, and the two loops got bigger and the tied bit in the middle got tighter, and before he knew it, he'd tied a bow all by himself. Gary was delighted. He sat on the hillside, tying and untying and tying and untying and tying his laces until he was sure he'd got the hang of it. It really wasn't so hard once you knew how. Then, with his shoes firmly tied, he thanked Horace for his help and skipped down the valley, shaking all the apples off the trees as he went.
So, in a few moments, we have to put our little Sherlock Holmes caps on. We have to do a little bit of detection. It's the game called Who Am I? I'm going to give you some clues, and based on those clues alone, I want you to try and guess who in history it is we're talking about. So get your pen and paper handy, put your thinking cap on. We'll play that game straight after the story.
"Oh my," said Gemma. "What is that horrible noise?" winced Mum. Gemma and Mum had their hands over their ears and expressions of some pain on their faces. The noise they were talking about was, well, kind of a cross between a cat with its tail caught in a door, fingernails on a blackboard, and sheets of metal scraping against each other. Oh, and it was very loud. "Whatever it is, it's terrible," cried Gemma. It seems to be coming from the lounge," groaned Mum. She and Gemma snuck along the hallway, huddled against the wall towards the lounge door. They flung it open to see Jimmy, face frowning in concentration, eyes shut with effort, with a violin tucked under his chin. He was trying to play it. That was the noise, like a cat with its tail caught in a door, and fingernails on a blackboard, and sheets of metal scraping against each other. They backed quickly out and almost ran back to the kitchen. With all the doors in between shut, they could almost shut the dreadful racket out. "Oh, what can we do?" moaned Gemma. "That noise is awful." "Hideous," agreed Mum. "I love Jimmy having an interest in music, but this... What can we do about it?" asked Gemma. "Let's see what Dad thinks. Maybe we need to have a word with Jimmy and ask him to practice in the garage." "Maybe Mr. Buxton's garage would be better," suggested Gemma. "It is very loud." Dad was reading in the dining room. "Let's see what he says," said Mum, and off they went. As soon as they left the kitchen, the noise attacked their ears again, echoing down the hall and into every room. The dining room being next to the lounge, when Gemma and Mum got there, the noise was almost unbearable. Dad was sitting in his favourite chair, reading the newspaper with his back to the door. "Darling," said Mum, as loud as she could over the racket, "we really must do something about the noise Jimmy's making." Dad kept on reading. "It's so loud, and he's so bad," wailed Gemma. "We don't have to put up with it, do we?" Dad turned a page. "I know what you're thinking," said Mum. "It's an interest, and we should encourage it. You're right, but... And I know I made a noise when I first started playing the recorder and no one said anything. But," went on Gemma. Dad said nothing. Yes, I'm sure you're right. He's trying his absolute best, and we should support him. He'll get better soon," said Mum. Dad turned the page. "You're right. We should do what you're doing and get on with life as normal and forget about the noise," said Gemma. "So sensible, as always. But we can hang the washing out and take a walk around the garden. What do you say, Gemma? I'm sure Jimmy will finish his practice soon," said Mum. "Yes, we'll do that," said Gemma. "Thanks for the advice, Dad," she called out as she and Mum backed out and shut the dining room door. After a moment, Dad shifted in his chair and looked over his shoulder. "Hello? Anyone there?" He pulled the wads of cotton wool out of his ears and called again. "Anyone there? Is someone talking to me?" he asked. A particularly loud, scrapey, screechy wail from Jimmy's violin shook the walls. Oh, what a racket!" grumped Dad as he stuffed the cotton wool back into his ears. "I must talk to Mum and Gemma. Maybe we should ask Jimmy to practice somewhere else and give us some peace. Though I know what they'll say. Encourage him, support him, he'll get better soon. Maybe I should get proper earmuffs if this is going to go on for a while."
It's really, 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 really simple. It's a game called Who Am I? I give you some clues. From those clues, try and guess who it is I'm talking about. Here come those clues.
What's his name? What's she called? I think I know who that is. Who could it be? Let's wait and see what the clues are to this quiz.
This man was born on April the 2nd, 1805. When this man was just 11 years old, his father died in 1816. He would then apprentice for a weaver and also a tailor. When he was 14 years old, he moved to Copenhagen, where he looked for work as an actor. His first novel would be about his travels around Italy. The Improvisator, an autobiographical book he had published in 1835, was instantly a success. First instalment of his fairy tales was published in 1835, with further stories published in 1837. In the collection were the stories The Tinderbox, The Princess and the Pea, The Little Mermaid, The Emperor's New Clothes, and Thumbelina.
What's his name? What's she called? I think I know who that is.
Did you guess who it was? Don't ask the teacher. I didn't tell the teacher. The teacher has to try and guess as well. Now, while you're thinking, let's have a story.
Yay, thought Deirdre. It was the school holidays, and every day for a whole week she could stay in bed for as long as she wanted to. There was nothing Deirdre liked better than a long lazy lay-in, and her very own bed was Deirdre's most favourite place on earth. Deirdre loved being in bed. It was warm and it was snuggly, and she had chosen all the bed linen herself. She had pink flannelette sheets and a duvet covered in fairies and lace. She had 3 pillows all of her own, and in winter her dad put the electric blanket on for her, so her bed was never ever cold. Yes, Deirdre loved being in bed more than anything in the world, and this week, being the holidays, Deirdre was going to make the most of not having to get up early and go to school. She was going to stay in bed for as long as she felt like it. No alarm clocks, no mum calling her for breakfast, no fixed plans, nowhere to go and nothing to do. School holidays, time to relax, lay back, enjoy. So day 1 of the school holidays came and went, and Deirdre stayed in bed. Well, she got up briefly to grab some food and to go to the loo, but most of the time she stayed in bed. It was warm and it was cosy, and Deirdre had plenty of good books and comics to read. In fact, on day 1 of the school holidays, Deirdre only got up in time for tea, and then she went back to bed again. Day 2 of the school holidays. When Deirdre awoke, she checked to see what the time was. It was already 10:15 a.m. Deirdre thought she'd just roll over and have another half hour before getting up. Day 2 disappeared, and Deirdre stayed in bed. Day 3 of the school holidays was a glorious sunny day. Deirdre kept thinking that she should really get up and enjoy the sunshine, maybe ring her friend Prue and meet at the park. But bed was just so nice. I'll get up in a mo, thought Deirdre. Day 3 was suddenly over. Day 4 of the school holidays, and Deirdre slept late. It was midday by the time she woke up. Where had the day gone? Deirdre crawled to the end of her bed and peeked out of the window. It looked a bit cold outside. I'll just read for a bit, thought Deirdre, and day 4 slowly petered away. Day 5. The last official day of the school holidays. Might as well get a good lie-in, thought Deirdre, as it'll be back to school next week. And so lie-in she did. All day, snuggled up like a bug in a rug in her bed. So the school holidays were over. That was that, and Deirdre had stayed in bed all week. When Deirdre went back to school the next Monday, she was greeted by excited babbling, excessive giggling and animated chattering. All her friends were talking about the great holidays they'd had and all the exciting things they'd done. Prue had gone horse riding, and Sophie had started to take surfing lessons. Minna had gone to art class, and Debbie had gone to stay with her cousins on their farm near Te Aroha. Deirdre kept very quiet. She thought about what she'd done in her school holidays and was very, very annoyed with herself. She vowed that next holidays she'd set her alarm for 8 a.m. every day and get out of bed even if it was really snuggly and warm. It sucked having no exciting stories to tell, and there was definitely more to life than lying around in bed all day, even if you did have pink flannelette sheets and a fairy duvet. Guess Mum was right, thought Deirdre, as she walked away from her friends and off to class. It's no fun being the girl who wouldn't get out of bed.
Almonds are a member of the peach family. A lock of Mozart's hair was auctioned for $50,000 US. A shark is the only known fish that can blink with both eyes.
I got a big woolly jumper that keeps keeps me warm. It's a pretty old jumper and it's pretty well worn. I wear it every day, it's like my uniform. It even keeps me cozy in a big hailstorm. It's the size of a tent and the colour of corn, and on one elbow it's a little torn. It's made from sheep that have been shorn, and I've had it since the day that I was born. I got a big woolly jumper that keeps me warm. It's a pretty old jumper and it's pretty well worn.
That's me. That's my lot. I am out of here. Thanks ever so much for joining me. Don't forget, if you'd like a little bit more of that, That's the Story, then after school, ask your mum and dad first, of course. Head for YouTube and find the That's the Story YouTube channel. It is awesome. If you can't find it, pop along to the That's the Story Facebook page. There'll be a link to it from there. Have a great week.
That's the story that I wanna hear.